So, populism. You hear that word everywhere, right? It gets slapped on all these different political movements and leaders across Western Europe. But what does it actually mean? Honestly, it can get pretty confusing, kind of like a junk drawer for any political idea that seems a little bit out there. Well, today, we're going to clean out that drawer and make sense of it all. Okay, let's start with a bit of a puzzle. I mean, look at these figures. On the surface, they seem like they're from different planets, fighting for totally different causes in completely different countries, and yet they all get tagged with the exact same label. Yep, that's the one. They're all called populists. And the big question is, why? To figure that out, we're going to dive into the work of political scientist Paul Taggart. His research gives us this incredibly clear framework for understanding what's really going on. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to nail down the one core idea that powers all forms of populism. Then, we'll explore the four main battlegrounds where that idea really comes to life, here in Western Europe. Stick with me, and by the end, this whole puzzle is going to make a lot more sense. All right, first things first. We have to get to the absolute heart of the populist playbook. This is the single idea that unites every single one of these movements, no matter what country they're in or what their specific goals are. So here it is, according to Taggart and a lot of scholars in this field, this is the definition. It's not about being popular, it's not about left or right, it's a very specific way of seeing the world, a worldview that splits society into two camps that are always at war, the pure people on one side and the corrupt elite on the other. And this just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? The people are painted as this virtuous, unified group, a single body that holds all the common sense wisdom. But the elites? Oh, they're not just disconnected. In this view, they are morally corrupt, tainted, and have zero claim to represent the real nation. It's not a policy debate. It's a battle between good and evil. Now, here's where it gets really clever. Taggart says populism is thin-centered. What does that mean? Well, think of it like an operating system. It's a core program, the people versus elite idea, but it can't do much on its own. It needs to attach itself to other big emotional issues to actually work. He calls this its chameleonic nature. It literally changes color to blend in with its political environment. So that's the big question, isn't it? If populism is a chameleon, what are the main colors it's adopting in Western Europe? Well, Taggart points to four key issues, four main battlegrounds where you see this drama of the people versus the elite play out over and over again. Let's kick off with the most common one, the one you probably think of first, immigration. This issue is like it was custom-made for the populist frame. It gives populists a really clear way to define who the people are, a pure, unified group whose very identity is now under attack. So here's how the story goes. You've got this out-of-touch elite pushing a multicultural agenda that they claim is watering down the purity and values of the real people. The classic case is France's National Front, right? Their entire brand was built on this. But then, check out the twist with Pim Fortuyn in the Netherlands. He was this openly gay academic who argued that Islamic immigration was a threat to, wait for it, the liberal values of Dutch society. It just goes to show you how incredibly flexible, how chameleonic this whole frame can be. Okay, on to our second battleground, regionalism. This is a fascinating one. In this case, the pure people aren't the entire nation. Nope, it's a specific community within a country, and the corrupt elite is the central government in the capital city. And this table gives us two perfect examples. You've got the Flemish bloc in Belgium, which taps into a very real, deep historical identity to attack the Belgian state. But then look at Italy's Northern League. They basically invented a whole new regional identity, Padania, as a way to attack what they saw as a corrupt Rome and a lazy South. It shows that the people can be a real identity or one that's just politically useful. Our third battleground is corruption. But for populists, this isn't just about a politician taking a bribe here or there. No, it's way bigger than that. It's about the fundamental idea that the entire political system is rigged, rotten, and broken. And this is the key insight. Populists argue that the very act of politics is what's corrupting. It takes good, honest, ordinary people and transforms them into a disconnected, self-serving elite. The problem isn't just a few bad apples, you see. The entire system, the whole orchard, is poisoned. And here we go again, a perfect example of that chameleon in action. Both the left and the right can weaponize the anti-corruption message. So left-wing populists like Podemos in Spain, they'll say the corrupt elite is all about corporate greed and big finance. But right-wing populists, like Austria's Freedom Party, they'll define the elite as these out-of-touch, cosmopolitan types who don't get ordinary people. It's the same exact frame, just aimed at a different target. All right, this brings us to our fourth and final battleground, Euroscepticism. And you have to admit, for a populist, the European Union is basically the perfect villain. It's seen as this remote, complicated, and totally unaccountable elite, which makes it an incredibly easy target. The EU wasn't always this political football. For decades, there was what's called a permissive consensus. Basically, the elites handled European integration, and the public mostly went along with it. But then, bam, the Maastricht Treaty in '92, followed by the huge shocks of the euro crisis and the refugee crisis. That consensus was shattered. All of these events turned the EU into a political issue, creating fertile ground for populism to grow. And of course, parties like UKIP in Britain and the AfD in Germany jumped all over this. They often started with a narrow focus on Europe, but just like that chameleon, they quickly broadened their message to include things like immigration. But the common thread, the core story, is always the same. The EU is a project run by elites, for elites, and the regular people are paying the price. So let's just step back and put all the pieces together. You can see a really clear pattern emerge, right? A populist movement grabs onto one big issue, let's say it's the EU. It then frames that issue as an epic battle between the good, pure people and a corrupt, distant elite. And once it gets a foothold, it starts broadening its attack to include those other battlegrounds. The chameleon might change its color, but that thin, core ideology of us versus them is always, always there. So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? Well, populism isn't just a random collection of angry protests. Paul Taggart argues we should see it as something much more significant, a barometer, telling us something about the political weather. Think about it, each one of these four battlegrounds is pointing to a massive fault line in Western European politics today. The arguments about immigration, regionalism, corruption, and the EU, they're not just noise. They're highlighting deep anxieties about the very nature of our societies, about pluralism, the power of the state, the health of democracy itself, and the entire European project. And that leaves us with one final, really crucial question. Whether you support populism or you can't stand it, Taggart's work shows us that it's a powerful signal. So, looking at the world around you with this new framework in mind, what do you think that barometer is telling us about the health of our politics right now?